so I should mute before I start lighting my cigar.
I'll mute. I'll mute too. I'll mute too.
There is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the Infinity Gems. It is the middle ground between the big two and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination. At the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, the Church of Failure, and with me, as always, is my trusty co-host, Ayrton McCartney. How are you doing today, buddy?
Oh, not too bad. It's been a 2-cigar day, and I had to deal with trying to skirt around wearing a mask to go to the fucking store today.
Are you sure you weren't just masking around wearing a skirt?
Well, no, that was last weekend.
Okay, all right. With us today in the let me finish. With us today in the virtual studio is the man that all the people are here to see, Poe's Law, and Karasoth, aka Larry Bernard. How you guys doing?
Yeah, Larry's here too.
Pretty good. This was a fun audible you called today.
Yeah, we were going to talk about Skrull Kill Crew, and then I saw the announcement about Rorschach. But Poe, are you back to the land of the living here?
Rorschach is dumb as fuck. Like, why would you put Tom King on that? I don't even understand that.
Well, I mean, I for one am interested to see how Rorschach will get a mommy wife.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll be like 35 years in the future, Rorschach. So it'll probably be the psychiatrist kid Rorschach.
Oh.
So.
Or, maybe this will be where Tom King talks about all of the torture he allegedly did in Iraq, working for our great country as a CIA agent, and that'll be a different kind of psychological outlet for him.
Well. Going back to what you said, calling an audible, Ayrton and I discussed this probably about a week or two ago, and we've been reading some miniseries and some closed stories, is what I call them, something like Watchmen. The most recent one would be 1602, we just completed with Novel Bro on the channel, but it raised an interesting question, right? You know how when you have a mini-series, it's really well done. Something like Earth X or Kingdom Come or Watchmen or something like that. Inevitably, another writer will come along because the company wants to milk the franchise, and they'll revisit that closed stories universe. And it just kind of strikes me as odd that we as comic fans accept this whole cloth, where I'm pretty sure, and this could be, I guess it could be somewhat of a straw man argument, but we wouldn't accept Lord of the Rings being written by a different author by the time you get to Return of the King, right? We see what happens when DC movies jump around with directors. You see what happens when Star Wars movies jump around with directors.
But they're such fun train wrecks, though.
But say you have an 8 to 12 issue story that's written by someone like Warren Ellis or Garth Ennis or Frank Miller, Grant Morrison, Neil Gaiman, any of these really good short story writers, and then they decide to do 1602 Spider-Man, and Neil Gaiman's not attached to the project.
Oh my god, I love Peter Parkour.
Yes.
Parkour.
But
Peter Parkour.
Drunk Poe is best Poe. What are you drinking on tonight, Poe?
With Evan Williams honey, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey blended with honey liqueur, 35% alcohol, volume 70 proof.
Say bourbon one more time.
Yeah, say bourbon for us again.
Evan Williams honey, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey blended with honey liqueur, 35% alcohol, volume 70 proof.
All right.
Evan Williams honey.
So that stuff is entirely too easy to drink, and I think you found that out.
Huh?
I said that stuff is entirely too easy to drink, and it sounds like you found that out.
Like there's like no burn. I thought it would be like a burn, like a vodka burn, but it's just like
No,
you can
just a
just like
charcoal
go every
aftertaste.
minute, like
Just a charcoal
straight.
aftertaste and some heartburn after you stop drinking.
I can't feel my cheeks.
I'm gonna take a
because
shot
you dropped.
to get up
So
on
this
Poe's
could
level.
this could be some really experimental YouTube going on here.
Yes.
Isn't it always with this show?
We call it.
Like, isn't it always experimental YouTube with this show? I mean, we've been kicked off for nudity. We've been kicked off for all kind of crazy shit.
I tweeted hose like 20 minutes ago. I don't know why I tweeted hose.
Just be glad you don't have a blue check marker. All those DMs would come out, and people aren't ready for that. So I guess that's where we should start. That's the buzz of the evening. Did you guys get your doubling?
Hose?
Did you guys get your double Bitcoin from Kanye or Elon?
Kanye, Elon, Bloomberg, Biden, Obama, Uber, Apple, a bunch of
Bezos?
small people.
Yeah,
Bezos, yes, Bezos.
So I was on Twitter when stuff was happening, but I still don't totally understand what happened.
So an upper level Twitter admin had their account compromised, and so they had access to the master Twitter options.
Oh, okay. So Sam Hyde did it.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
Basically. And
Him
some
or
people
him
were
or
saying,
Frank
"Oh, it
Castle.
has." Yeah, exactly. Some people were saying, "Well, it has to be a state level hack," and I'm like, "Oh no, Twitter's just really bad at internet security."
Yeah. It's like that image of
So
the.
they're
what's
bad
this
at
Bitcoin?
everything.
What's this Bitcoin thing I've been seeing people talk about?
Oh well, that was the scam.
It's-
That was the scam. All
Yeah.
these big accounts that this
If
guy
you
got
give them
into.
1,000, yeah, if you give them 1,000 in Bitcoin, they'll give you 2,000 back.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you give them your Bitcoin, they know everybody who's ever given you Bitcoin. They can trace it back to your actual physical address, dox you, and dox anybody who's ever given you Bitcoin.
Right.
Bitcoin is literally the worst anonymous currency trading system for any of the cryptocurrencies.
So, yeah, that
It did always skeeve me out, just the concept of it.
that definitely happened. I am now a Bitcoin millionaire. Suck on it, plebs. I got all of Kanye's Bitcoin. See, I just kept sending him the double back, and I guess he didn't realize that he just kept sending the same person Bitcoin back. I guess I'm the only one that had this happen. So sorry about that, guys. Sorry, the rest of you lost your Bitcoin. I have it all now. But what else? It feels like there was one other thing we needed to briefly touch on. The Watchmen, the Rorschach Watchmen reboot. Chad Middleton in the chat brings up an interesting question. Will we see Rorschach's penis? And I will go further on that and ask, will we see Rorschach's penis and will its face change?
What?
Why are we seeing Rorschach's penis? Are we like, is this Black Rorschach or
No,
like
I
the
think
Black teenage Rorschach?
I think it's a reference to seeing Batman's penis. Wasn't that Tom King as well?
No, that wasn't Tom King.
Oh, okay. Who is responsible for the bat penis?
I don't remember, but it wasn't Tom King because Tom King was doing the opposite of that.
Oh, okay. All right. So
You not showing the Batman penis?
that's what everyone's been doing for a
long
long time.
What's the opposite of showing Batman's dick?
Well, instead of being sexually titillating with Batman, the opposite of sexual titillation.
Cucking him. Yeah, Tom King was cucking him.
Yeah.
So, but again, the announcement of the Rorschach thing just kind of sparked it because I feel like we've all read Watchmen on this panel, right? Like that's kind of a given.
A bunch of times.
Nerd.
I have read Watchmen. I love Rorschach's his monologue.
The journal.
Where he's like, well, the part where he's like, they'll cry out for me to save them, and I'll whisper no, and I'm like, that's deep.
I have to agree. That was one of the most iconic moments, and that was definitely why Scott Snyder had to recreate that almost verbatim for the movie. But if you haven't seen,
It's like
go ahead.
it stuck out to me so much because when I would expect that from like a character like Batman, like they'll cry out to save me, and I'll jump out because that's my duty, that's my goal, that's my lot in life. But then Rorschach's just like, fuck you,
Hmm.
fuck you for putting yourself in this position. I'm just here to save those who can't be saved, who can't save themselves. But you who could have saved yourself, fuck you.
So, being familiar with Watchmen, I think we can all at least come to a mutual agreement that it's a perfect 12 issue maxi series. Everything,
Yes,
the story is told,
better
the
than
character.
Doomsday Clock.
Oh, absolutely. Um, the story is told, the characters are developed, there's character growth, all of that stuff, and it's accomplished within 12 issues with auxiliary material like, the Rorschach files, the police reports. Like, the Alan Moore fleshed this entire world out in 12 issues, and he did leave a lot of stuff behind for people to build on should they want to, but there was no need to, right? So
Right. Especially with that TV show.
yeah, so
Oh,
Well, let's just pretend like the TV show didn't exist because that would be better for everybody.
but then what would we do with Lube Man? We have to have Lube Man.
yeah. Well, okay, we did get Lube Man.
So how many of you are familiar with Before Watchmen? The several miniseries that focus on the people.
Well, I know they exist
Okay.
Yeah, that's about my knowledge too.
Yeah.
because I saw them and I said, "Wow, this is a terrible idea. I'm not going to buy this with my money in the comic book store." And then I
Right.
went and bought something else.
Right. I bought them because I was an idiot and didn't realize that you could fuck up Watchmen. And I don't think I finished any of the series. Like, I probably bought them all just because the completionist in me wouldn't let me not do that. But it was the first time that I kind of had this thought that you don't really need to mess with Watchmen. Watchmen is fine on its own. It needs no sequel, no prequel. You don't have to milk it. Like, it'll keep selling on its own.
Right.
And that thought just kind of bounces.
I will.
Go ahead.
I will give them that. At least since we're talking about Watchmen, Rorschach is a very, very compelling character. So
yeah, you know who else is a very compelling
see,
character? You know who else is
Ozymandias?
I don't know. What about the fucking Question?
Well,
yeah.
I got one better for you, Mr. A.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying, in their defense of putting this out, he is an extremely compelling character that does have some mass appeal, and they need money.
Oh sure, but
So,
my question isn't can they milk this franchise for every dollar it's worth. My question really stems
Is your
from
question what else will they let Tom King ruin?
No, that's a question for another day though. My question is at what point
I would think I think it's stupid, but it would be stupider if they were doing like Owlman.
Wait, I remember Mr. A. I read Mr. A. I read Ayn Rand in high school, and I was like, Mr. A fits a lot of that, and like he reminded me of Ayn Rand, and I don't know why because I really liked Ayn Rand in high school.
What
Because
high school did you go to
Mr.
that
A.
you were reading Ayn Rand?
No, I was reading a lot of stuff from when I was like 5 years. I was reading like the 48 Laws of Power, The Prince,
Mein Kampf.
The Art of War. I never read Mein Kampf actually, but
Look.
I read like medical textbooks because my dad wanted me to be a doctor,
Look,
and I
Church,
was
are you
actually
trying to get this stream yanked already before we even get to the good part?
He said Minecraft. He was talking about the Minecraft handbook.
Oh,
Yeah. You just
I
misheard
read the
me.
Minecraft handbook too. I read the Minecraft handbook in like middle school.
But no, my question isn't, can they milk this for everything that it's worth? My question can best be simplified as, at what point is it no longer the same story? Like, at what point does the spirit of the story no longer exist? Because for me, once you remove the writer that built the universe, no matter how many people you let play with that toy box, it's never the same story again.
Well,
I think
by
it
that
depends
logic,
on the story.
Okay.
well, devil's advocate. By that logic, you can't like any Spider-Man that wasn't written by Stan Lee.
Well, and that's
You
the
can't-
conundrum. That's the conundrum that I have because
it's
see, here's the thing. When you have an ongoing series, I think that once a writer is done with their run, it should be a new volume of that character. Even if you're gonna be writing the same character, Tom King's and Zack who is it? Zack Snyder, the
Scott Snyder.
Scott Snyder.
Snyder.
Their
Zack
run,
Snyder is the Hollywood hack that
their
people think makes good movies.
their run should not have anything to do with one another. It should be, Bob Kane and Bill Finger's Batman, Tom King's Batman, all should be individuals. And these stories that, pull lore from each and every one of them and try and play on that mythos that someone else developed, I can't, in good faith say that the mythos is actually.
Well, I got
You
a
know.
counter argument. I got a counter argument for you on that,
Okay.
but I also kind of agree with you in a general principle. Because, I like the fact that there's a giant 80-year train wreck of Batman continuity.
Right.
That there's an 80-year train wreck of Superman continuity.
Yeah.
That there's a 50, 60-year train wreck of, Spider-Man continuity. All that.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
But the kids coming up today, they're not as enamored by that sense of legacy of the characters of the stories. Now, they
No.
appreciate it if that stuff's in there in some degree, but not in the way someone like you or I did when we were their age.
Yeah. Well, and
So
the thing is when we were their age, comics used to be written in a sense that you could pick up a comic book having never read one before and just jump right in. Nowadays, you pick up a comic book, you pick up something, I think somebody mentioned Doomsday Clock earlier. If you haven't read,
I mentioned that was me.
If you haven't read Watchmen, if you haven't read Rebirth, if you haven't read, any of that stuff, if you don't know the origin of Superman, Doomsday Clock makes no fucking sense. You can't just jump into the middle of Doomsday Clock.
I got a whole bunch of thoughts down that road because that's a really good road to go down. But I've been thinking about this more and more, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's time for us to close the book on Peter Parker as a Spider-Man character, and just have Peter go off into the sunset with a last barn burner, blow out all the doors comic book run, and do that with all these comic book characters because the companies want to have new characters, and maybe we need to do that as a fandom and say, yeah, let's do that. Let's have things that are more like manga with contained runs where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, even if they don't have an idea for the end. Maybe we need to do that going forward for comics as a artistic medium to be more viable for the future.
Go ahead, Poe. What were you chiming in with?
Have you guys ever heard of Spider-Man Fake Red, the manga? I can't feel my feet. Have you guys ever read Spider-Man Fake Red?
Yes.
No.
Spider-Man Fake Red. It's a beautiful manga. It's a manga, it just tells the Spider-Man story. And at that point, Venom hasn't been introduced yet, but it tells the Spider-Man story. And then for some reason, Spider-Man goes missing for a week, and this kid finds Spider-Man's costume just left I forget where, like maybe an alley or like a street or something, and he finds it, and like it's the web shooters are still there, and he puts it on, and like he's like, "Oh my God, Spider-Man's gone. I have to be Spider-Man now," or something like that, I think. And he goes out. He goes out and he tries to do Spider-Man. He hurts himself trying to save people. He barely does a good job. Like he does a terrible job, like a shitty job, really, to be honest.
The work
But
job.
he saves people still. He saves people still, and like, he gives people hope. And then he finds Spider-Man, and Venom is introduced as Spider-Man. Spider-Man is in the symbiote. And
That's kinda
I think Mysterio shows up. I don't remember. Like I read it like a few months ago, but Mysterio shows up, and but Spider-Man is in the symbiote, and the kid, as being Spider-Man, inspires Spider-Man to let go of the symbiote and be back to himself again. And it's beautiful, and it really was like it tells the whole story perfectly. Like Speedball shows up, and like it's great and all that, and like the creator was suffering because people in Japan weren't really reading it because it's Spider-Man. He's more popular in the Western world, but
Well,
it was
I mean,
a
they also
beautiful
have their own
manga.
Spider-Man in Japan too.
Yes, Spider-Man, but that's a different Spider. His whole thing is different. He has a Megazord, and that's just not Spider-Man. Although Spider-Man did have a Megazord during the Otley run where he split in half, but that's a whole different thing. Anyway, Fake Red, it's beautiful because he comes back from Venom because this kid inspires him that he was trying to be Spider-Man while he was gone. He comes back, he lets go of Venom, and he's Spider-Man again. And anyway, I should read the rest of it because I haven't. But that's the point where I stopped.
No,
I think we got to
no,
make Captain Weed read this. Go ahead, Ayrton.
Yeah.
we do. So that actually brings up an interesting point. Like, we've had this discussion before. Like, why is manga so much more popular in the West nowadays than Western comic books? Do you guys think that could be part of it? There's not these
That's a very
constant reboots.
strong part of it.
It's a strong
over
part
and
of
Another
over.
it.
You
thing
can just
is-
read One Piece, or you can just read Dragon Ball, or whatever.
Go ahead, Larry.
that's it.
Another thing is, so let's say like a new manga starts in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
In 5 to 10 years, you'll see that rolled out into a series, video games, and other adaptions.
Mhm.
With a comic book here, you never know. So for the young guys coming up, they get into the manga early. Once everybody else who didn't get into the manga is getting into it with the video game, with the card game, with the TV show, that gives them a sense of clout and superiority over all those other people.
Right. Like,
So that-
I've read the manga that's based off of.
Right, but you also feel more ownership when it's something you jumped in on.
Right.
Yeah, when you were there from the ground level, like it's a common plight of comic book fans. We often revert back to, well, I've been reading Spider-Man since the '90s, and I've read every comic book that he's ever been in. And like that means something. Like it doesn't. Just because
Can I
you've
say
read
something?
every,
Can I say something?
of course you can.
So like I feel like because you've been reading it for a long time, it does mean something because I've only been reading Spider-Man since I was like what 13. That
Right.
was like 10 years ago, maybe 12. But no, I've been reading since I was like maybe 8 or 9, but
Okay.
maybe 9 or 10, 9 or 10, yeah. But
10 or 11. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
Or
Yeah,
maybe
but
12. Maybe
here's the
12 or
thing.
13.
I don't know as much about Spider-Man as you do.
Right.
Like I know his general character, but I don't know about as much about him.
Well-
But like I understand Spider-Man. I feel like I do, but I don't know much about 90s Spider-Man or 80s Spider-Man or 70s Spider-Man apart from the little few snips that I've seen.
You started
But-
reading after the Clone Saga, and for that you should be grateful.
Yes, yes, I started reading after the Saga. Really, I only started reading super close to the release of Kane as Scarlet Spider when he was in Houston.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite like runs because I loved Kane. Like it made me love Kane. I never thought of Kane as a bad guy because I saw Kane in Spider Island and then I saw him in Houston and I was like, I love this guy because yeah, sure he's a jerk, but he's a jerk for a good reason.
Yeah, but you don't have that back knowledge of just how big of a dick he was when Ben Riley was running around.
Or, more importantly, you don't have the back knowledge of going like, wait, the clone was dead. We all saw the clone be dead originally. Why is it back in now? Why are there like dozens of knockoff clones? What the heck's going on here?
They're all clones. They're all clones, and they're all cake clones. So
Oh,
Exactly.
don't start with a fucking cake. I'll cut
So,
somebody.
so what you were talking about individual bite-sized stories earlier. Did any of you guys watch Avatar: The Last Airbender?
yes.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I love that show.
For the most part, every single episode in that show can be taken and watched by itself. There are a
Right.
couple like two-parters here and there and things like that, but
Yeah,
for the most part, every single show can be watched by itself and has its own self-contained story, which has little bits of connecting tissue to the broader story, but it's not necessary. And every book can be watched as a single story. And the entire saga of all of the books together is also one story. And that should be the gold standard or near the gold standard for what comic books should be shooting for in crafting long form narratives.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
so the guys who wrote Avatar should just write all of the comic books from here on out.
Well, no.
Because I'd be for that.
The thing about
No.
the thing about
Um,
Avatar is there was a 3-man intelligence that created the original show, and then they broke up the band, and then everything went horribly wrong.
No, Korra, the person who had everything kept together for Avatar left in Korra, and Korra went to shit. Korra went to just shit.
And then there was
It
a
was
live
Korra's
action movie
terrible.
that never happened.
Well, no,
What movie?
that's not their fault. That's M. Night Shyamalan's fault.
We can't blame everything on Shyamalan.
But
Everything is his fault.
well, we can blame that on him.
But
I'm
So
blaming COVID on him.
just well, not to
so
get-
the lead scriptwriter went off to do his own show, The Legend of the Dragon Prince, on Netflix.
That's a good
and-
show. It's a very good show.
It-
And
it's a solid
Sokka's
show.
voice is in it. Sokka, the voice actor for Sokka is in it. I can't feel my face.
This
Thank
is my
you, Bo.
first time
Please
doing a
keep us
stream with
updated.
somebody who's drunk. So
No, it's not.
This is
No,
a
it
new
is not.
experience for me.
It's not a new experience. You've been on this show before.
yeah.
Oh,
By the
well, this
time
is the first one who's obviously drunk.
Well, really, that's a hell of a compliment. I feel like everyone can tell when I get shit faced. But the not feeling the face means it's working, Poe. It's okay. Just make sure you. Shit, you're eating keto. Oh fuck me! You can't even like drunk munch correctly. Oh no!
Ooh,
What?
You're gonna hate yourself.
You're
Tomorrow.
you're gonna have a bad time when you realize all the carbs and calories from carbs you've just been eating.
No, there's no carbs in whiskey.
No, that's
Yeah,
not what we're
yeah,
talking
that-
about.
Well, number one, that's not true.
That's not true.
That's not true at all.
Whiskey's a grain liquor.
Yeah,
No.
Whiskey's made from
It's
carbs.
sugar. Sugar is carbs.
but
Yeah.
Let's
Like
be honest.
everything you're
I've
drinking
gone-
is whiskey.
No, it says there's no carbs in whiskey.
no, but there's not when you imbibe it, but the alcohol breaks down into sugar and insulin in your bloodstream, and that's.
But I checked on keto website. No, I checked on keto website. I checked on like 7 or 8 keto websites. It said there's no carbs in keto. Carbs in whiskey.
Somebody
Do you
needs
hear
to
the
tell my
desperation
gut.
in his voice?
Somebody needs to tell my gut that. But anyway, no. Before we get too far off track, like I hear what you're saying about manga, and that's a really good example of my point. Is I don't think that ongoing series are necessarily the worst thing ever, but you know, when you're dealing with an ongoing series, there's usually an editor trying to keep the storyline together. And the argument can be made that the same editors keep the storylines together for the limited series runs and their, predecessors. But that's not necessarily the case because take 1602 for example.
Mhm.
You can read Neil Gaiman's 1602 as an 8-issue series and you get introduced to all the characters, and at least up until the last issue, when you could tell they rushed it and hurried it. Once you get to the end of the story, everything's kind of wrapped up in a nice, neat little package. And some of the
You said package.
some of the offshoots, there's a Fantastic Four one, there's a sequel, and then there's a Spider-Man one. They all kind of fall in line with the spirit
Peter
of the story.
Parkour. Peter Parkour.
Yes, yes. They all
Thank
kind
you,
of.
Bo. How's your face?
No, but I always had a problem with his name because why would they name him Peter Parkour when Parker would work just fine?
It's Peter Parkour.
Well, actually,
Parkour, I think.
he adapts the name. He adapts the actual name Peter Parker to disguise his identity when hiding from King James in a future issue.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, but those three spinoffs, they kind of have the spirit of the story behind it, but you can tell it's not written by Neil Gaiman, and the overall tone of those books just drifts further and further away from the tone of 1602 proper. Well, then you get to...
Yeah, the Fantastic Four one is weird as fuck.
Yeah. Then you get to 2015. What is that? 10 years after the original one finished. You get to 2015 where the Secret Wars is going on, and there's a tie-in where they introduce Angela, the hunter of the witch breed.
Oh,
And
that's the one where Wolverine shows up.
yeah. But that miniseries, as much as I love everything Secret Wars, that miniseries was absolute dog shit. It didn't have the feel of 1602.
I absolutely don't. I also don't know why anybody liked that whole Secret Wars thing from Hickman.
You can just leave the live stream now, sir. I didn't know you wanted to start a fight with me. I didn't know you wanted to start a fight with me here.
Everybody, check off Secret Wars rant off your bingo cards, everybody.
But
here we go. Buckle in. I'm gonna go
mean,
take a piss while he goes into this. I'll maybe go for a jog.
I'm not gonna go into it too hard, but he just took his gauntlet off and smacked me across the face with it. Ayrton, you expect me to take that sitting down?
Also, I don't know what anybody sees in the X-Men thing that Hickman's doing either.
Oh no, I don't
You
either.
mean House of X and Powers of X?
Any of it, the whole umbrella of what Hickman's doing.
It's very stupid. I liked it at the very first issue, but then it just started going crazy. Like, really, I only liked House of X.
Yeah.
Powers of X was immediately what's
House
going
of
on
Powers
here?
I found interesting. I found it a compelling concept, and I wanted to see where it went.
But
after that, it was just stupid.
The interesting thing about that is, the reason I brought that up is there was a limited kind of run within that whole thing done by everybody's favorite comic book author, Brian Edward Hill, which didn't really engage with the broader weirdness of what Hickman's doing with X-Men.
Yeah,
and
the weirdness is what I liked. That's why I kind of like
his was
Hickman stuff, and then I kind of stopped reading it.
Yeah, but Brian's the one he did, Fallen Angels. It was a very deep, focused character study, and it dealt with Psylocke and Quanian.
Yeah.
Is that what her character's called?
Yeah,
I know she was called Revenge at one point in time, but it had to do with the two of them resolving all of their tensions, and they recently kind of resolved the whole weird race swap angle with them.
Yeah, it was boring as fuck.
And the thing, though, is that there was like some good, solid character stuff in that comic book. There was like good challenges. There was some good things where he kind of sussed out some of the things, like going, okay, so this is what Hickman's trying to do. This is interesting, but clearly it's not interesting with someone who's not Brian Hill's writing it. So I'm just going to ignore that and focus on Brian's story.
Well, to kind of cycle back to your main point, you brought up Hickman's X-Men thing, just to pivot myself away from Secret Wars. You brought up Hickman's X-Men thing, and that's a prime example of what I'm talking about. they start this big, main, huge event that's going to reboot and relaunch the entire X-Men franchise. They give Hickman
After they had already done one with Grand Design.
Well, they give Hickman 2 X-Men books that he executed well for his style of writing. Like I don't know if you can't tell or not. I'm a Hickman fanboy. I love his writing.
Mhm.
I like all that weird nuanced shit that he does. The symbols, the plotting threads.
I love it. No, I love the infographics Hickman does. Like they've literally sent me on.
And
I've literally Googled all his infographics because I love them.
And the
I
plot threads.
Craftsmanship.
The plot threads that start 5 years ago and end up back in his books. But you have to be somebody who's willing to invest the kind of time to appreciate those things. And most people aren't patient enough for that, or don't even know where to start looking. Like, he started sowing the seeds of Civil War Secret Wars, in Fantastic Four and Avengers.
Yes.
When he was on those books.
Yes.
And he was just dropping little bits and pieces that he could pick up when he got the book he wanted. And that, that's the kind of stuff that it's interesting, and it makes for a really good experience with somebody that has that level of craftsmanship at the helm. But you can't tell me that after he left any of those titles that they got picked up and were handled in a way that would make it seem coherent to an average person. Same goes for X-Men.
No, God, no.
You get these 2 main books that go off with a lot of fanfare and revere, and then you have 7 different teams trying to follow Hickman's directions, and it's just a shit show.
Whoever did Marauders, I thought, did a pretty decent job keeping that weirdness to it, though. I will say that. As far as the spin-offs go, I did like Marauders. The rest of them sucked, but Marauders was fun.
But Marauders has gotten weird since then.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've read any of the newer.
And that's another element is the comic book companies are investing in authors that are very high concept, very heavy investment storytelling, and they just don't invest in something to follow up with that, so you end up with very jarring things. It's literally self-contained stories, so they should just write it that way.
Well, and we've talked about this here on the show 1,000 times. We all know where I stand with legacy comics and legacy characters. I don't think ongoing series even should be a thing anymore. I think the mainstream industry should almost follow the Comicsgate model of short, concise storytelling, set runs, and then you put the character on the shelf for a little while, work on something else, and then bring it back. 1 big story a year from a Spider-Man instead of 8 different Spider-Man titles. And
that's a whole separate argument. Is do we have too many different titles for every character?
Right.
But I do want to kind of focus in more on your broader point here of self-contained storytelling.
Yeah.
I'm not against continuing legacy characters, but I think maybe it's time for Peter Parker to have his last adventure go off into the sunset. And, Miles Morales, Spider-Man, sure, fine. Let him continue selling Spider-Man books. And then they'll maybe come up with somebody new around 2099.
Bring back Mayday Parker. She's already an established character, and it's her time anyway.
Yeah. So that's an element to me. Is I don't.
And I mean, I like Miguel O'Hara.
Yeah.
More of that.
No,
it's fun.
Exactly.
Weird.
I think that they should, especially as some of these characters are going to be slipping into the public domain. That's where the comic book company should do is they should just phase them out and go into characters that they can have more ownership of for longer. Of course, how public domaining Superman works is going to be a giant mess, but everybody's going to try to do their own Superman story at that point in time. So it'll be a fun mess when we get there.
From the way it was explained to me, when these characters start to go into public domain because their copyright and their trademark are still owned.
Well, no. Copyright will be open, but trademark won't.
Right.
So you could do a Superman comic book, but he can't have the same colored cape. He can't have the big S. So he'll have to have a different costume, look, and like all those sort of little telltale
It's
physical
electric
signs
blue
will have to be
Superman's time to shine.
So are we going like Stanley? We're going like Stanley's Believe It version of the DC universe.
Yes.
Well, no.
Oh, that was actually good stuff.
That was interesting. It had its moments.
I mean,
But
Batman being a
that's
boxer
where-
that dressed up in an actual bat costume was fucking phenomenal.
Look. I mean, Stan was an old guy. I'm not going to accuse him of doing cocaine, but I'm wondering if Stan was doing cocaine,
Oh, he was definitely doing cocaine.
Absolutely.
or if like maybe he was channeling the memory of when he was doing cocaine at some point in his life.
No, he was doing cocaine.
Oh man.
But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. From my own perspective, creating a story, I'm going to create a set saga of storybooks for that character, and I don't have plans out of that unless people buy a whole bunch of copies, and then I want to get into business doing that. But
Well,
I haven't gotten that far yet.
But here's the question though. Say you reach Watchmen level success. At what point, like, does it cease to be your story? Because you'll notice that Alan Moore hasn't wanted to be attached to any reimaginings or revisitings of his
Well, that's
properties.
Part of that, though, has to do with the fact that Alan Moore is looking back at his own art. He's not satisfied with what he did. He believes a lot of the things he's done with deconstructing the superhero genre, he went too far. So Alan Moore, as an artist, is saying, I don't really like what I did back then.
Has he read anything Garth Ennis has ever written? I don't think anybody's deconstructed the superhero down to the skivvies like fucking Garth Ennis has.
but like that was the reason Alan Moore did the whole Supreme run he did for Liefeld, because he wanted to do a love letter to the superhero because he felt bad about all the stuff he had written in the past. So that's a part of why he doesn't want to be associated with Watchmen or anything like that. But let's pivot to something a lot easier to do this thought experiment with. So Star Wars. I could very easily come up with dozens of Star Wars ideas.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But they're not George Lucas ideas.
Right,
and
Star
I
Wars
could tell ideas that would fit well into the George Lucas umbrella.
Well, Star Wars is one of those franchises that has handled its canon very well. They
until Disney.
Has it?
Well, yeah.
Until Disney,
right? You gotta remember, Ayrton, I'm old. I remember back when you could write a Star Wars book and use the name Star Wars and the actual characters, and they would publish it and promote it for you, and it just wouldn't be considered quote unquote canon.
Well, see, the Star Wars thing though is really it was the what's his face Alec Kurtzman.
Kurtzman's with Star Trek.
Or Star Trek, yeah.
I think Alex Kurtzman was also involved with ruining the X-Men movies at some level.
That's possible. But so the original Star Wars, that wasn't George Lucas. That all of that was fixed in the editing. He didn't even write the second two movies, which are the good two. Like the prequels,
you watch your whore mouth.
Is all George Lucas, and those are terrible.
Well, no. The prequels is more complicated, but number one, lots of movies are saved in editing.
Look,
Star Wars isn't unique in that.
You go watch the Rey. You go watch the Rey movies again, and then you bow down to the Supreme Ruler Jar Jar Binks. Okay, you motherfuckers thought you didn't want Jar Jar Binks, and then you got Rey and fucking Kylo.
No, just because the sequels are terrible doesn't make the prequels any better.
Yes, they do. Yes, it does. It does.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
So there's a YouTube/video guy called SF Debris. I recommend you go to his website. He did a massive documentary series explaining why the prequels failed in excruciating detail. Here's why the prequels failed. George Lucas wasn't just the creator. He wasn't just the director. He was also the studio. So he couldn't say, hey, listen, I'm running a multi-million-dollar / billion-dollar company. I need y'all to stop work for like 6 weeks so I can hash out this script. That couldn't happen anymore. George had salaries and paychecks he had to do, so he had to cut corners to keep the company running.
Still, he didn't have the first. He recorded Phantom Menace off like the first draft of the screenplay.
Well, let's hold up and get back to that here in just a second. And the problem is he didn't want to direct anything after the first one. But nobody wanted to direct the second one. They said, "Listen, George, you weren't happy when other people came in and collaborated on this vision with you. So we want this to be your vision." And then when the third movie came around, everybody around him said, "Listen, George, stop writing a movie for a director that's not George Lucas's skill set. You're going to be directing this movie. Write a movie that you can direct."
That actually brings up
part of why
a point in the chat. Rotten Glory says, in other words, there should be some vision rather than random political agenda, in reference to comic books. And yeah, I don't think that always comes into play though, especially with some of the eras that we're talking about.
Well, vision is part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just meant the
You
random
can
political
have-
agenda. Like, I'm not bashing
I mean,
the political vision of anything directly, except maybe the
how
Secret
long
Wars
was
Witchblade.
Claremont's run? How long was Claremont's run on X-Men?
Oh God, it feels like 20 years.
Let's just say forever.
So Chris Claremont was able to have a strong vision,
Go ahead.
and it was able to unite multiple X books, and we would all go back to that type of writing, that quality of writing, in a heartbeat. And that's the problem we're having right now. There's not strong vision. There's not strong story craftsmanship. Artistic craftsmanship is in decline. So
Holy shit! It
if
was
that's
it was
going
16
to be
years.
16 years.
Yeah,
So
he wrote X-Men for 16 years.
yeah.
It was almost 20
So,
years. Jesus, I was just having a laugh.
So you could have guys at that caliber just writing forever on a thing and nobody would care.
Right.
But the comic book companies don't have the Gordon Ramsay like character sitting around saying, where's your quality, where's your standards, and enforcing it on the company.
You know, if
So
Joe
if we're going to do that,
if Joe Quesada regularly walked up to the people that he employed, held two pieces of bread between their ears and called them idiot sandwiches, comics would be in a much healthier place right now.
but that's the thing. So if we're not going to have that level of quality, so yeah, let's just say you got 5 years to knock around on Spider-Man. That's one volume, and the next Spider-Man volume doesn't have to carry over anything
Right.
beyond the core essential. This is Spider-Man stuff.
Well, think about it like
Obviously,
this. What if, God, what is it? Superior Spider-Man. I forget who wrote that off the top of my head, but I actually really enjoyed the run. If you read the run as an isolated piece of comic book literature, it's actually really good and shows a lot of character growth of the mind-controlled Peter Parker, Dr. Octopus guy.
there were some interesting ideas that happened at the end of that run that they just didn't do anything with. That kind of annoyed me.
Right.
Which makes me more annoyed about the Superior Spider-Man run.
But the point of the matter is, and getting back to the key point of the overall discussion, Superior Spider-Man wouldn't have worked if you would have cut the run in half and split it between two different writers with two different visions.
Right.
The same goes for, and the reason that I brought up miniseries in particular was because a maxi series like Kingdom Come or Watchmen or V for Vendetta or any of that stuff, there's obviously a grand overarching vision. The artist and the writer worked very closely with one another to build a style that worked for both of them and told their story the way they wanted to tell it. and I just don't think you're getting consumer justice, if that makes sense. When an editor just says, "Oh, well, we have the 1602 thing laying around. Why don't you see what you can fuck around with that?"
Right. I mean, I think we need to go back to no continuity comic books or more condensed continuity comic books. I think that is the healthier way going forward if the industry is willing to get healthy.
Yeah.
And-
Well, what if let's say let's say for sake of argument, Novel Bro for some reason gets hired to be a writer for Marvel, and he says like, "Yeah, mate, I really like this 1602 shit. I want to write something in this universe."
We've
Can I do
already
that?
we've
They
already
say,
seen
"Sure."
that Captain America was a Nazi the whole time.
But I'm saying if there's a competent writer that understands that microverse, I guess, and like really like I don't know, grew up and like that was one of the first books they read and they want to do something with it as like a tribute or whatever. Like if they're talented enough, why not let them?
Right.
So basically doing something more like what Sean Gordon Murphy's doing over at DC
Well,
with his whole White Knight angle.
yeah. Now, real quick before we get into that, Poe, you've been awfully quiet. You okay over there, buddy?
I'm just eating some ribs. I'm just eating some ribs the whole time.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
You guys are talking.
I
Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to weigh in at all in between ribs.
No, it's fine. It's fine right now. If I have to say something, I'll pop in.
Just eating these
At least
ribs.
you're not eating beans.
Hey, at least the ribs are gonna reduce that blood alcohol level eventually.
That's cool.
Okay,
So-
what's the over under of his asshole just being in pain tomorrow morning when he wakes up to take a shit?
Well, it depends on what kind of ribs we're talking
I've
about.
drinking 4 bottles of water already, so I should be
That's
fine.
not
I
enough,
feel.
son.
Oh no,
Really? Jesus Christ.
no.
I'm
Actually,
23. I feel like it should be.
you sound a little more coherent than you did when you first got here, so you might be okay.
Yeah,
Now, what?
you're getting towards coherent.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Just make sure you take like 2 aspirin.
Still can't
before you
hold
go
my
to
head
bed.
up straight though.
Well, just take
I still
2
can't hold my
aspirin.
head up straight.
Take 2 aspirin before you go to sleep tonight. That's the best advice I can give you.
And sleep in damp socks.
Damn.
Wait,
sucks.
why?
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Why?
I just wanted to see if I could get him to do it. Don't question me. You're supposed to just agree, motherfucker.
No, I've just heard all
So-
kind of hangover cures. Like I've even heard a spoonful of bacon grease. That was the most disgusting one that I've ever heard and tried. But yeah,
I'm gonna take 2 tablespoons of coconut oil before I went to bed anyway.
Oh, okay.
But I think if we're talking about self-contained stories as well as commercially stories, if you just have like one and done kind of stories where you got Superman and he decides to become Super Pope for some reason and he fights a mind control battle with Batman as a one and done like the old 50s comic books would do for continuity, and somebody says, hey, let's do some more comics out there. It's like, okay, you can have the rights to do that, and then that creative team does a crowdfund and raises the money to produce for that. That could be a good, interesting business model. Though
I'd be down for that.
AT&T and the Mouse probably aren't down on that kind of a business model if we want to get super honest. But
No.
the way things are going for both of those companies, they could change their model. They could have brand managers managing everything, and people could just go pitch saying, hey, I got a cool Wonder Woman idea. So, like, what if we focus on the fact Paradise Island is the descent of ancient Greek thought, and we build a morality and ethical code for the Amazons from there, and we then have Wonder Woman go to this world of modern women with basically an evolution of the classical Greek mindset, and then challenges them on their own concepts of what feminism is.
Well,
Wait, what are you doing? Why is the security guard coming here?
well.
Wait, did you just come up with an actual good story?
Oh, yeah.
That's not the point.
That's a great
You're
Wonder
not
Woman
allowed.
story.
You're not allowed to do that, Larry.
But we're getting a little bit off the reservation, so to speak. Just
I actually really like that idea. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
you're
Oh
good.
no,
That's
it's a great
actually-
idea.
It is.
That's actually a really fascinating idea.
But
You know what I've always wondered?
what?
Mm.
How come like Superman has enough technology within his fortress to essentially terraform a planet? How come he never built a new Krypton as like a monument to the old Krypton?
Because he's a guy from Kansas. Why would he do that?
I mean,
That's a good point.
technically, he started doing something similar to that when the Earth got fucked over by a nuclear weapon in Kingdom Come. He and Magog were both working towards the same goal separately of terraforming certain parts of the planet and making it habitable for human life again. But
And if he made a new Krypton, he wouldn't have powers because there would be kryptonite everywhere.
well, no, I mean you can.
So,
Superman could probably well, actually, no. Maybe that's it because of the butterfly effect. He doesn't understand, the consequence. Like he doesn't understand what the consequences would be of putting a new planet in a solar system. So he doesn't want to take the risk of fucking the entire universe just for his own innate desires. It's actually kind of on brand for him.
Or, he's just a guy from Kansas and he wouldn't have any interest in doing that.
I don't know. Then you wouldn't have the city in the bottle of the bottle city of Kandor. Right?
Well, he has the bottled city of Pandora because he found them. They were captured by aliens. He's at least related to them in some way, so he has a sense of obligation to them. But he doesn't want to bring back the whole Kryptonian civilization because it's
he
what do
also
I know
wouldn't
about
have,
that?
He also wouldn't have taken Mon-El to the future to be preserved in the shadow, the fucking.
Well, that was back when Mon-El was Kryptonian for a little while, and then they changed that.
Daxamite.
Question.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about Ultimate Comics, Ultimate Marvel?
I thought it was.
It was an interesting. It was an interesting idea that went badly.
I thought
And
it
had
was a
lots
shit
of
show.
really interesting ideas.
I
Okay,
have
so
a
if
nostalgic soft spot
if
for it.
Ultimates Volume 3 had never happened, would you still think it was a shit show? Like if it never got to that Ultron killing Scarlet Witch, if all that hadn't happened, would you still, if the Ultimatum Wave hadn't happened the way it did, would you still think it was a shit show?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh wow.
There were good
I have a
parts
little
of
bit
it.
of different.
There were.
I have
go ahead.
different thoughts. Because when I started reading comics more, that was kind of right in the middle of Ultimate X-Men is kind of where I jumped in when I was younger. So I have a little bit of a nostalgic soft spot for it. It's kind of strange and a lot of it doesn't make any sense, but I also haven't read it in probably 12 years. So, but just nostalgic memory, it's enjoyable enough.
Well,
I'm sure if I reread it though, I might not like it as much as I remember enjoying it.
For me, it committed the cardinal sin. The one thing that I've just consistently bitched about in comic books. It took established characters and it broke them down to try and appease to a new audience without doing away with the legacy versions of them. So if you were new to comic books and you picked up The Amazing Spider-Man off your shelf and you read Amazing Spider-Man and you're like, hey, I like this Spider-Man guy. I'm going to go get some more of this. I want to read more of this. And then you go back and you see right there, Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate's better than Amazing. So you pick that up and it's a completely different fucking story. And you're just like, what's
Right.
going? I don't understand. It led to more confusion, I think. I get what they were trying to do.
That's fair.
But it was the same fallacy that they had with Marvel Max. It was the same fallacy they had with, Vertigo over in DC. It just taking established.
Well, Vertigo's a whole different animal.
Not
Okay.
in the beginning. Vertigo was an entirely different animal, but then they started rolling things like Constantine into the main DCU, and it didn't jive at first. It took a little while to figure out that sweet spot, but they still John Constantine today is just now getting back to some of the character traits that John Constantine had in the original Vertigo run.
Well, and just some quick self-defense. The only story arcs I remember is Wolverine getting chased down by Weapon X operatives and breaking into Spider-Man's house, and then him, Spider-Man, and Daredevil fighting them off in Hell's Kitchen, and then Nightcrawler getting jealous of Angel because people thought he looked majestic and stuff, and leaving and going to move in with the I'm blanking on the names, the Underground Mutants. That's all I really remember from the Ultimate X-Men run.
You know what I remember from the
fun
Ultimates?
Stories.
I remember the convoluted ass way they introduced the Red Skull. I remember the Blob eating the Wasp, and I remember Captain America being a fucking prick. That's what I remember about the Ultimates.
Well, let me give you what I remember. So they had a storyline where the United States of America fell apart, and there were a bunch of warlords and anarchists that had taken over hunks of the country.
No,
and the president was about
that's
like
2020. Larry,
No.
that's actually happening.
That was last week, Larry.
Well, no. This actually happened also in Ultimates. And so America did a phone vote, and they decided that Captain America was the only guy who had the cojones to bring the country together. So Captain America became president, and he solved all of America's problems by punching it in the face.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Cap does.
That was a great run. That was one of the few things that happened in Ultimate Comics I enjoyed. Was Captain America getting on an F-15 fighter jet, landing in a town, and saying, "Hey, listen, you're going to come back in the United States of America, or else what?" Cap punches the guy in the face.
Now, I do have to make
Miles Morales beat up a giant 50-foot teenage girl, and that was beautiful to me for some reason, because I was also a teenage boy, and maybe for some reason I had a dream of punching a 50-foot teenage girl in the face.
Well, I mean, how else are you going to
Was
drag
there
her
a
back
girl
to your
in school
cave?
that picked on you, Poe?
How else are you going to drag a 50-foot girl back to your cave if you don't punch her in the face?
I mean,
I
either way,
also
it's beautiful.
liked the idea they started with Ultimate Thor of, is he really a god, or is he just crazy? I would have loved to have seen that explored in more detail.
Ultimate Thor, that's where they split it, where you have the spirit of Thor inside your head if you can wield the hammer. Am I right on that?
No, that's
not just you are.
No.
Where did they do
No,
that?
Thor
split?
was reincarnated. He had died and he was reincarnated as a human.
Now,
Is that what it was?
I do have to clarify one thing. I don't hate everything about Ultimate Comics. I just think that they could have done it a little differently. All of these offshoot and not independent, but all of these offshoot imprints like M2 and Ultimate.
Insular is what you're looking for,
right? I'm still not going to say it.
It's basically Marvel wants to do a reboot like DC did in the '60s, but they're making too much money off of things to do that.
Right.
So you know what I thought was gonna happen during the collisions of the universes? I thought Ultimate was gonna be the one that won out. They would actually just mix 616 with Ultimate, and that most of the characters that nobody cared about from 616 would just be forgotten or killed off, and the Ultimate and the Prime would mix together, and it would be a universe that made a bit more sense and was less convoluted. But instead,
isn't that basically what they did? Isn't that how they dragged Miles Morales into the mainline?
No, they just killed Ultimate, and then they dropped Miles. Miles had befriended the Molecule Man
with a
cheeseburger.
Molecule Man
just brought
Molecule Man just brought him. Right. Yeah, I forgot the damn cheeseburger.
Yeah. Molecule Man just dropped him and his. They're like, "Hey, you gave me food, so yeah, sure, I'll believe you alive with your family."
Yeah.
Also, I'm gonna pick up this chick here, Gwen, and bring her over
now
because she's also marketable.
Now, here's the question though: Molecule Man is
one night I don't have some bitch sitting on my couch that I can ask to go get me a cheeseburger.
Now, here's the thing, though. Molecule Man left Miles alive because Miles was nice to him and fed him a cheeseburger. But he also left the Maker alive, who he literally turned into food and ate in the Secret Wars. So
Somebody has a board fetish.
I'm just saying. But anyway,
Also, I hated in Ultimates when Reed Richards got an Infinity Gauntlet, but with extra gems in it.
oh god, yeah, no.
You know what I hated in Ultimates? You know what I hated in Ultimates? When like Susan Storm basically raped Reed Richards, but in a bloody way, because like for some reason she came out with blood on her or something.
Yeah.
And he
And I
was
was
just
like,
like,
did you have to do
whoa.
that?
I mean, that's what happens when you don't use enough lube, Poe.
Like, did you have to do it? Did you have to rape him hard enough that you made an elastic man bleed?
Spoken
Was it
like a man
necessary?
who's
Again,
like a man who's
that's
never
why you
broken
need
his
to
dick
use
during
lube.
sex.
I mean, Reed is literally elastic. What did she do to him that made him? What did she do to him that made him bleed?
Indian
But
burn.
Church just but Church just to bring us back onto the track
Yeah.
here, the counter argument to your
Hold on,
thesis
sorry, Larry.
about a self-contained comic book story.
I just need to point out real quick that the guest is the one keeping us on track tonight.
Hey, how many times have I righted this fucking ship tonight? Okay, I'm just going with it at this point. But no, and I think I just want to make sure that everyone's clear on what we're discussing exactly. Like, it's not about ongoing series. I'm willing to forgive just because of the nature of that beast. Just go around the panel real quick. Obviously, everyone knows that I'm opposed to the idea. What does everybody else think about opening up somebody else's work and just trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle with another creative team? Like, it almost be like somebody trying to pick up Walking Dead from Robert Kirkman. You don't do it, in my opinion.
Let's have a crazy fantasy talk. Let's say somehow I could get a meeting at Marvel, and I could say, "Hey, listen, you got."
Can everybody just kind of go around the horn and just where do you guys stand on that exact question? Like, where do you feel about that particular issue personally? Like, what are your exact thoughts on it, Ayrton?
Well, it's super complicated. I think it depends on the creative team. It depends on what the property is. Like I said, if somebody like Novel Bro, who's a giant history nerd, wanted to write an offshoot of 1602, it would probably be good, and I would probably enjoy it, and I'm not going to be mad about that. Versus if,
but why did it? Like the question isn't would it be good or wouldn't it? Why can't it be 1603 instead of 1602 Part 2? Or why can't it be a different historical era?
Right, but if you like that story and you wanted to say okay, I wonder what happens after the end of this, and you had a talented enough creative team.
So your answer is
if it's done well,
that you're okay with it
under on the context,
under the right circumstances.
I'm not a hard yes. I'm not a hard no. It really depends on the individual creator.
I'm kind of a hard no on it. That's the point. Like you're okay on it under certain circumstances. Like there are circumstances where you think it would be okay. Larry, go ahead.
So it depends on the story. Depends on the authorial vision. Let me use the Disney Star Wars movies as a perfect example. When The Force Awakens came out, there was a giant set of open doors. And then Rian Johnson put concrete over all but 2 of them. So if you're following a Rian Johnson, there's really not any point in following that story because it's already been closed off. But if you're following somebody like a J.J. Abrams that leaves you with thousands of doors to go into, then yeah, go nuts. It's all about the authorial vision, and if there's also an editor who's having authorial vision, if there's an open space for you to write something into, or if it's a shallow space where there's nothing left to work with, then no, don't do it.
Well, go ahead, Poe, before I get off on this tirade. Poe dead. Poe died.
Poe, swallow the meat and then answer the question, damn it.
That's the same thing I said to my prom date.
Yeah.
But here's my thing about it. Like, I get where the circumstances come into it for you two guys. My condition would be that the editor would have to be the original author. Like, that would be the only acceptable condition for me. Like, if it's not the original author doing the writing, the original author would have to be the editor-in-chief of that, or the main editor of that book. He would have to be able to look at it and go, no, this is completely out of character for what I wrote. Go back and look here, change it, or get the fuck out of my office. Because that's the point. Like, there's no cohesion. Like, let's walk down this path. First off, you did a really interesting thing referencing Star Wars, Larry. I actually had a similar allegory, but with Game of Thrones. Okay, so we're all aware that Game of Thrones, the first 5 seasons, were basically curated by George R.R. Martin, and after he ran out of, source material, they just kind of winged the rest of the show. And the obvious drop in quality is apparent. Like, people have noticed it.
Do you know the secret as to why the quality went in the toilet?
Please, fill us in. I know, but some people in the audience might not.
They had their ending planned, and so they wrote backwards. They wrote from their ending to where the last of George R.R. Martin's material was.
Yeah, but
so nothing made any sense.
Well, in doing that as well, you build up your climax at the middle instead of the end. I mean, it's just kind of a natural fallacy in writing. Like, you can't start at the ending because your ending is supposed to be your crescendo, or not. Your crescendo,
Like, they basically they decided on the ending and then they built everything that was supposed to lead to the ending backwards.
Right, you can't do that. It just doesn't work.
You can't do that. It's bad.
But the thing with me is, if the original author, and I would even go so far in comic books because it's a visual medium, to say the original artist, if possible, and the original writer should be involved in any extrapolations of a closed circuit story like that.
Right, but then you get the James Cameron scenario, where James Cameron will say, "Oh yeah, this is great. Give me my check."
I mean, and that's fine. That's when you have.
Or, I mean, ARBBH, Parsonovich stopped, illustrating the comics. What, issue 2.5? They switched him out, or 3.5. So,
I mean, yeah, but the thing is again, he's still a co-creator, and you still have your original vision because that vision was being led by the writer. And again, I said depending on the work, but when you get somebody this greedy, it becomes apparent and people quit buying it anyway. I mean, Terminator movies aren't really blowout blockbusters anymore. They got it over with Terminator 3, but after that, it's just been kind of a crapshoot.
right.
So just because James Cameron, gives it the thumbs up, doesn't necessarily mean it's gold. It just means he got paid.
Well, no, that literally, it means he got paid, exactly.
It means he got paid, but it doesn't mean that the studio did. And eventually they're going to stop making Terminator movies that they run by him.
But here's something fascinating is, if the studio keeps making bad decisions, eventually they'll be desperate and give the franchise to somebody who will actually treat it well. That was what happened with Christopher Nolan. They basically ran Batman into the ditch, and they said, sure, Chris, this whole European-style approach to Batman, yeah, go do that.
Well, that's what happened with Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
With The Mandalorian.
Yep.
They were like, oh, everybody hated Rian Johnson. Here, go make a TV show.
Mm-hmm. But, I want to go back to one of my original examples though, and we don't accept this kind of thing in other mediums, right? Release the Snyder Cut as a hashtag kind of proves this because
That actually, sorry, that reminded me. You did bring up Lord of the Rings.
yeah,
Everything that's not the Hobbit and the trilogy was all written by his son.
not the Sumerian.
So,
the Sumerian was finished
Yeah.
by his kid.
The Silmarillion, yeah, his son finished it based off of his notes.
Right, but it was
yeah,
already
he didn't actually write it.
no. It was,
They were
He
world
wrote a
building
bulk.
notes that his son.
He wrote a
then
bulk of it.
compiled
His son
into a
compiled
story.
it. Yes.
Yeah,
And several of those world building notes were also short stories that he expanded on.
Right.
right.
So I
So,
mean, but again, like I think that kind of leads us into a nuanced area where I'm almost okay with it because Tolkien.
and that's why I can't be a hard no on it like you are.
Well, I'm talking about specifically with comic books. I'm a hard no because I mean, until you show me like, I think John Romita Jr. is a legacy comic creator. I think there might be one or two more, but it's not really a family trait. Usually, your kids don't grow up to be comic artists because you grew up telling them what a shit job it was.
You want to make slightly more money than a manager of a McDonald's? Work in comic books.
You want to make slightly more money than a manager of McDonald's for doing twice the work? Work in comics, kid. It'd be great.
And spend half your paycheck on cigarettes and cocaine just to do the work.
No, the cocaine is gratis if you work for Marvel. Don't ask me how I know.
Oh,
Well, I mean, back in the Jim Shooter days, Jim had extra cocaine lying around.
Yeah, I mean, you just go into Jim's cocaine drawer, which was a vault. But there is an exception to be made for an actual legacy. Tolkien's kid. I don't know anybody who would understand Tolkien's works better than his kid. Maybe a historian.
Well, I mean, Peter Jackson claims to. But...
Well, Peter Jackson did a very good job on the first 3 movies.
He did.
And then he took the one good Hobbit movie and said, what if I turned this one movie into 3 movies?
That was somehow longer than the 3 movies I just wrote off of 3 books.
And we're so bad. That fucking, what is it? That frame rate thing he did for it. Just
the
so
best part
awful.
of that fucking
Anyway,
movie was
sorry.
Benedict Cumberbatch like fucking mocapping the dragon.
I prefer to watch the behind the scenes mocap.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
That's way better than.
I want the
than
cut of
any
the movie with
movies.
no CGI. But anyway, release the Snyder Cut as a hashtag is kind of a proof in the pudding, so to speak, that people don't take well to a just complete revamping and revisioning of a story that's already been established. And with the DCEU being established by Snyder, and then who was it? Not Cameron.
Well, Joss Whedon got
Joss
called
Whedon.
in. Joss Whedon got called in because of shenanigans.
Absolutely. But with the type of shenanigans that were going on, I would have just tabled the project. I mean, it just...
Okay, but now you're not a CEO of a company that's expecting multiple $1 million stock bonuses from this movie and the movie's success to lead to huge profits off of the merger with AT&T.
No, I'm the person that wants to enjoy the goddamn movie.
Right. And I think the whole, won't accept a different authorial vision thing, I don't think that's the core lesson of the Snyder Cut. I think the core lesson of the Snyder Cut is people don't want to watch garbage anymore. And Zack Snyder said, hey, I have a version that's not garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody said, well, let us see it. And now there are stronger rumors about a George Lucas cut existing, and that we may be seeing a George Lucas cut in the future.
Wait, what?
So there is a rumor. There
Is
is a rumor, and I'm going to stress for the third time, this is the rumor.
So this is
That
complete
it's
facts.
a rumor, you say?
No, what Larry's about to tell us is completely 100% proven, and it is a fact. I think that's what he's trying to get across.
You mean like this fact?
So
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Alex, how do you keep getting in here, man? Didn't security bar you from the establishment?
So the reason I'm saying it's a rumor is because there have been various sources that are credible that have provided bits and pieces of this story to other people, and even I get little teeny tiny bits and pieces of this rumor. So I'm not going to say that this is like hardcore yes, hardcore no.
Oh, just give
Is
me the
also a
weenie.
scoop for
Enough with the
gospel?
goddamn hot dog bun. Give me the weenie. What is it?
So allegedly, George Lucas did his own
Put
cut
some mustard
of
on the
The
weenie
Rise of
first.
Skywalker
Uh-huh.
with his own scenes.
Ooh,
There's at
really?
least 2 scenes that were in George Lucas's cut of the film. One of those scenes was Anakin Skywalker as a Force ghost talking to Rey about what it's like to struggle with the dark side and explaining how the Emperor came back from the dead.
Oh, you mean we actually get an explanation of that shit?
I know, right? And the second one is, you remember that scene where Han Solo's alive and talking to Ben?
Yeah.
Well, what if in that same sequence you had Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill, all 3 of them sharing a moment on the screen together, helping Ben back onto the path of the light side?
You mean something the fans actually want?
So allegedly, sometime in I forgot when the meeting happened, but allegedly a bunch of big money people for Disney heard this existed, confirmed it existed, saw it, and were pissed off that this was not released.
Right.
So
I've started a hashtag on Twitter, by the way.
I saw that.
So there is a rumor that this is going to sometime in September get announced that they're going to show it on Disney Plus after they finish doing all the stuff like the Snyder Cut.
Okay.
Although that seems unlikely because of Disney's corporate culture, because that would mean Disney would have to admit they made a mistake.
Right.
And the mouse does not like to do that.
No.
The mouse is infallible.
Don't cross the mouse. You'll wake up without kneecaps.
Look, you jump on the steamboat, boys, but don't rock it, okay?
But the Hayden Christensen scene is apparently a well-known rumor in Hollywood.
Okay.
Huh.
So
Interesting.
that's why
What?
I'm
Well,
willing
why
to give
would it
that
be Hayden
some-
Christensen? Why wouldn't it be the old Darth Vader? Like when he dies.
Because I think that guy's dead.
Yeah, but they can CGI shit now.
Can we get James Earl Jones in whiteface?
Yes, please.
And-
Please. I need to see that.
And allegedly, there's a couple of reasons why that scene with Hayden got, refused by Kathleen Kennedy. Is it
'Cause she's a
basically, no. It builds in architecture to decanonize the Disney trilogy. Is the current hot gauze going around the rumor scene?
I saw that.
So, basically, I think we
Real quick.
Yeah.
Poe, are you still conscious?
No, Poe's dead. Poe died.
Okay.
Poe is face down on the plate
Ripping
of ribs.
pepperoni, Poe's liver.
Yeah, Poe is face down on the
wanted
plate
to
of
check
ribs
on him.
right now. His mic's still activating, so I don't know. I'm so glad he was a part of this, though. He is responsible
He was a part of it for some time.
for release the Jar Jar cut, says Chad Middleton in the chat. No, we've already got almost 100 playbacks on this, and I'm pretty sure it was all Drunk Poe's fault.
Jar Jar is a Force ghost.
No, Jar Jar was supposed to be a Sith Lord, according to the leading
Yeah,
rumors.
I've seen all that.
But no, just to just to kind of drive everything home, because we could probably wrap up here in the next little bit. We've still got about a half hour worth of show time, quote unquote. But I think we're all a little bit just burnt out on the idea of ongoing stuff, and just constantly being tossed from one character arc to the next, just based on the whim of the writer when it comes to ongoing stuff. But again, when it comes to these individual stories that are written with one creative team and then are expanded upon by other creative teams, for me at least, I think that that's something that should be curbed, except under strict circumstances. Um, I don't think that it should be used as a cash grab, even though whatever I think doesn't matter. Obviously, that's the disclaimer we should have had at the very beginning. No matter what we think, it doesn't matter.
No,
Also,
our opinions are gospel. This is the gospel of comics.
That is correct.
What we
But
say.
also remember, if it's a cash grab, it'll be 6 months for the person who's doing the art to actually get the script.
Oh, I like Donald though. Not Donald's fault.
I like Donald. I'm not blaming Donald for that one.
Look, you got to understand, it takes a lot of alcohol to write a script, okay? Like several bottles of Jack Daniels.
Well, I mean, if you're doing it the way Cecil's doing it, I would certainly agree.
And don't forget the cocaine.
No, I don't think that's an issue. I think things would be a lot. Strangely enough, I think this is the only time this will ever be uttered in human history, but I think cocaine would actually calm the situation down a little bit.
Well, I mean, we all saw that video of him passing out on the live stream.
Oh, God, I want that as my phone background so bad. I just want a gif of that as my phone background. He's so drunk.
And this is why we don't go on camera.
Did you see that, Ayrton? He's so drunk on a stream with John Malin and Ethan and everybody else. And Ethan just blows the screen up real quick, and Cecil just kind of falls the fuck out of his chair, drunk, sleeping. Just kind of like heroin nods out of the chair.
We don't use cameras on this show.
Oh, God. No, I don't know, man. That's a topic for another day. Just we try to keep our noses clean here on the Gospel of Comics, and we're not gonna.
No. I didn't mean to say anything like that. I was just making a joke about that because it was a good topical joke to make.
Okay, but no, I think that we're all just in the same kind of rowboat. I think we just all have different ideas of what becomes acceptable at a certain point. And as always with comic books, it really comes down to it just needs quality control. If there was quality control, this wouldn't be an issue. But
by the way, Marvel DC, I'll walk through your studios with a fucking loaf of bread, calling people eating sandwiches all day. I have no problem with that. So if you're looking to hire somebody,
definitely, but pay him extra because I'm going to demand half his salary.
that's true. Yes.
But just to finish up a point that I was trying to make earlier and didn't quite get out, I want to go through like 1602 real quick, just for posterity's sake.
Look, is Neil Gaiman paying you to talk about 1602 so much?
He's not.
We just
got done reading it. It's the most fresh.
I know.
Yeah, it's the most fresh thing in my mind. But it actually spells this out really well because there were so many spin-offs of it. So you had the original 8-issue run, and then you had sequels. So the first sequel was 1602 New World, which is basically a sequel. You have a second sequel, which is a Fantastic Four sequel. And then you have the Spider-Man 1602, all with different writers. Okay. Peter Parquois makes an appearance in
There
Spider-Verse.
was one more, wasn't there?
Well, hold on, I'm not there yet. Peter
Okay.
Parquois makes an appearance in the Spider-Verse, which doesn't really count as a sequel to me. It just, the character pops back up where all the Spider-Men are popping up. That makes sense. But then we get to the fourth and final quote-unquote sequel where Angela is introduced after she gets sold to Marvel Comics by Neil Gaiman.
Well, I mean, sold is a funny version of how that happened.
Did he not sell them Angela after he acquired it from Image?
Yes, but you see, you dropped the lead by ignoring how he got Angela to sell to Marvel in the first place.
Oh well, he created it in the Spawn book under McFarlane at Image, and then him and McFarlane had a shit fest for like almost a decade over the ownership of Angela, Medieval Spawn, and Tony Twist.
No. But that was also connected to Rob's trying to get all the Miracle Man property rights under his umbrella. And he didn't actually have any of it, but he told everybody, oh yeah, I own like 50-60% of it. Or Todd, rather, not Rob.
Yeah. No,
and
he still doesn't own any of it, does he?
No, he lost that lawsuit. He got BTFO'd.
Yeah.
And then Neil Gaiman was finally able to get the rights together and do the ending to that storyline he wanted to do. And as part of that deal with Marvel to help him finish that story, he sold them Angela.
That's another
so
show.
So Angela ended up becoming a property of Marvel Comics because of the lawsuit of Superman and Captain Marvel and the destruction of Fawcett Comics.
Mm-hmm. Which actually started... that's convoluted as shit because that lawsuit, the original lawsuit happened, 50 years before Angela was ever created?
Exactly. Exactly.
But anyway, you get to 2015, you get to Secret Wars where there's a domain called 1602. But you have King James as Wolverine, which wasn't really alluded to in any other, version of any other version of 1602. But it is such a stylistic divide with the art and the writing. I mean, this is one of those comic books, and to be fair, just for complete, disclosure, I hate comics that try to do this gimmicky shit where they have two distinct art styles telling two stories at one time. I hate that shit. It just breaks my suspension of disbelief completely and utterly. Now, not only does this book do that, but it's so far removed from what 1602 was in the first place that it brought this entire debate up. Like, me and Denny argued about it. Denny, a good friend of the show, we argued about it for 45 minutes one night, Ayrton?
Friend in quotes. But yeah, something like that.
I mean, for you, I like the guy. But, no, we argued about it for like 45 minutes because, to a lot of people, it seems like I'm saying that just because the X-Men was created by... God, I don't even know who created the X-Men right now. That's how you can tell. Did he create them?
Yeah.
I think it was Stan and Jack.
Yeah. I was going to say, that was more of a Jack thing at that point, I believe. It was
probably more Jack.
Yeah. Well, they collaborated, though. Not as much as Stan said, but not as little as Jack said.
Well,
Stan
it took
Jack
a lot of...
like,
it took a lot of talent. Look, it took a lot of talent for Stan Lee to sign his name to all of Jack Kirby's comic books, okay?
Well, it's like McCartney and Lennon. Like, the song Yesterday was written, performed, recorded, all that stuff just by Paul McCartney, but still says McCartney and Lennon. It's a professional courtesy in the creative realm.
But,
I get it.
Well,
here's the point, though.
Also, Stan kind of helped Jack, taper his ideas down because he wanted everything to be like New Gods and like the Eternals and all of that stuff. And Sam's like, whoa, this is really cool, but can we narrow this down to something a little bit more marketable?
Yeah, like laser focus it in, sort of thing.
So one thing that I want to bring up is that just because I'm an old fuck doesn't mean that because Stan Lee created the X-Men and Jack Kirby created the X-Men that no X-Men should exist without them. I don't think that that's what I'm getting at here, but I do think that these closed story arcs, these mini-series and maxi-series that become so important to people, really creators and the editors and the people in charge of this stuff should take a step back and realize the value of what they have and how much value they lose by letting anybody just kind of stick their dick into, I see Don Chen in the chat and I feel bad now. But, metaphorically stick their dick
What's up, Don?
in the, primordial soup, so to speak, of these
By
characters.
the way, Don, church is so much more respectable when you're on the show. But
I really am.
Well,
I really am. I curb my enthusiasm and my swearing.
That's why I said I'm okay with it within certain parameters. Like I'm not saying just give whatever continuation to any Tom, Dick, or Harry that walks up and says I want to write this stuff.
Real quick, Don in the chat says, one time I was at a convention in the 80s and I heard Jack Kirby say, if we ever get invaded by aliens, we should eat them. I love Jack Kirby now.
Can we do story time with Don, please, as a segment? I want to just hear stories of conventions back in the day now.
I mean, we should try and set up a show like that where we just let him just like lament on all of the experiences that he's had.
Well, I mean, that should obviously be your Festivus episode.
Oh yeah, that would be good.
Have Don air his grievances about the state of comic books.
I think he's just trying to get his
as
out
I was
right
saying.
now,
As I was saying, and we brought this up before for talking about writing for just legacy characters in general. A creative team needs to prove themselves if they want to take Watchmen, 1602, Marvel Noir, whatever, and write a continuation on it. If they've proven themselves to be quality writers, good artists, whatever, and they show that we can put confidence that you can write a sequel to this standalone miniseries, maxi series, then sure, that's fine. But don't let some random crackhead with multicolored hair and ears that you could put a beer can through walk in and say, "Hey, I want to write X, Y, and Z," and just hand it to them.
Yeah. The preferred term is danger hair for those people.
Oh, my bad. I don't want to offend them. I don't want any of those people showing up on my door.
You really don't.
Well, I mean, that's why you call it. That's why you call it danger hair, because it's there to warn you that you're in danger.
Yeah, no shit. So, I mean, I
am into redheads, Larry.
I feel like we all came to a kind of a consensus. It wasn't really as combative as I thought it would be.
Well, but, that's because Poe's passed out in his chair right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's got some more things. But I'd like to actually approach this with some other people and just get some different opinions on it. I feel like the conversation's like worth having just for the sense of I don't think
the conversation.
Well, I don't think that it's that uncommon of a thing. Like, I'm sure there are other people who have read continuations of original works and were like, this is dog shit. You can look at it in any sense of the word as well. Like, it's not just comic books. It's not just movies. It's not just books. any time that an original vision is looked at and said, hey, we can milk that by splitting it off into 14 different factions. Even professional wrestling did it with the damn NWO back in the 90s.
Well, the NWO wasn't even the first time that was done.
No, but by the time the NWO was done, there was like 7 different factions of the NWO, and everyone had been a member of all of them.
Well,
Yeah.
even song covers.
Yeah.
Like this is something that strands all creative media.
Right.
But
Like-
also, let me give you a prime example. So Peter Parker became a Tony Stark billionaire, right?
Yeah, and that was bullshit to me.
And
yeah.
well, but you could have done something interesting with that, because Peter Parker's whole character's been defined by his being this lovable loser kind of guy who
Peter Parker was
things don't
defined by
always
being
work.
poor.
Well, I'm not talking about poor, like, you know, things that always work out for him. But what if you did a run of like 1 to 2 years of Peter Parker realizing, wait, I'm actually good at this, but I've been slacking and actually getting good. That could have been an interesting year to 2 of Spider-Man comic books.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
And then you have the obvious payoff at the end of that being he defeats Mephisto and gets his marriage to Mary Jane back from the devil. I mean, right? That would be how you would end that run of Spider-Man.
I think they already did that one, Larry.
I like that.
Pretty sure that one already happened.
No, they
bud.
did. They haven't undone One More Day.
Oh, okay.
That's never been
Not official.
undone. And while MJ and Peter are dating and like hot and heavy again, I'm talking about undoing One More Day and Peter getting the daughter that he was supposed to get and that the devil stole from him.
No,
That's what I'm talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah, you're right. They haven't undone that, but they kind of did when they started Renew Your Vows, which is actually a fairly decent book.
But Renew Your Vows is like
okay.
a whole separate universe deal.
Yeah, it is.
Now, am I the only
I'm
one
talking
who
about
thinks
mainstream.
up until the ending of it that One More Day was kind of compelling up until the ending?
No, that's the way
It
all
was
of these stories.
interesting.
That's the way all these stories work. Is they keep you hooked in, and they do something you hate.
It was interesting.
That's why I
but
said compelling.
it was interesting, not compelling, because they decided to subvert your expectations because allegedly Joe Quesada was upset over his divorce and he didn't want Spider-Man to be married if he couldn't be married.
Okay, hashtag comic book readers, stop shoving your personal shit into comic books.
But
Holy shit.
but no, I don't mind the ongoing series so much. I think that there's something sacred about the short, and it's really just the ones that get traction, right? Like nobody's out here bitching about the fact that there were 2 creative teams on the Skrull Kill Crew, because nobody knows what the fuck the Skrull Kill Crew is.
Which is a shame because it's fantastic.
It is, isn't it?
And the problem is, though, that nobody who wasn't alive back when like mad cow disease was a thing will get it.
But there's a quick backstory on that, Larry. We were tossing around ideas of what to do for the show, and I told Ayrton, I was like, I've got a couple of mini-series we can look at. And he said, that sounds good. Send me some options. And I was like, I will. And then I just picked for him because I knew he would love this.
and I did. I really did.
I was just going through the list,
so
and
weird.
Yeah, I was just going through the
It
list, and I was
makes
like,
no
wait a
sense,
minute.
But I love it.
Wait a minute. A gangbanger and a neo-Nazi have to team up to fight aliens? This is perfect.
With Medusa dreadlocks?
Yes.
You're forgetting the Medusa dreadlocks.
I'm not.
That is my favorite part.
I'm not. I love the novelty of the gangbanger and the neo-Nazi having to team up. But anyway.
It's so ridiculous.
Anyway, that'll
we
be
might
a
have
show
to do
coming.
a third show this week, by the way.
Yeah. We'll decide whether it's going to be Friday or Sunday. I hate you.
Okay.
Saturday,
Hey,
we
I got us a guest. You kept telling me I need to do more for the show. I got us a guest for Saturday.
I have a guest for Saturday.
What?
Yeah. You didn't tell me you had a guest for this Saturday.
Yes, I did.
No, you said you were going to
Is
send
it the
somebody
same-
an
yeah.
email.
No, I said I'm DMing with somebody who I was talking to. I was like, "Does Saturday work for you for this guy?" And you said, "Sure, send me his Twitter so I can look him up." I said, "Okay, here you go."
Was that drinking?
Probably.
Well, I mean, I can't be held accountable.
The Florida man guy.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Talk to him and see if he can do Friday night, because
Okay.
my Saturday night guy, I dropped the ball because I had some personal issues this past week and barely made it home in time for the show on Saturday, and he was supposed to be on that night, and I was just like,
Okay,
I felt terrible.
Yeah, I'll message him and see if he can do Friday.
Okay.
So I got an idea for a show for you.
Okay.
An idea is you get people who are like comic skate creative type people
Mhm.
and say, hey, gun to your head, Marvel and DC offers you a contract. Tell us what you're writing. Because here's something that's been bugging me about the whole scene is none of the comic books, for the most part, Super Harem is a notable exception. None of the comic books, for the most part, that are coming out of the scene are things that DC or Marvel wouldn't make. Now, they might not make something like Cyberfrog because they're saying, like, why the heck would anybody want to buy this? But most of these are things that would be
$3 million
in a normal
later, they don't question it anymore.
Right. But what I'm saying is, though, like, these comic books would all be like in a normal comic book company strike zone. So I'm just interested to see if anybody else
Absolutely,
has ideas that they think Marvel or DC wouldn't make, and then the next question is, well, why aren't we making those into comic books?
Well, actually,
Like that Wonder Woman idea I mentioned.
I could kind of extrapolate on that. And
Well, I mean, we can turn that into one of our list of questions that we ask everybody.
Yeah,
Eh.
but one thing is, we could do a show where we equate Comicsgate books to an industry equivalent. Like Cyberfrog, I think the closest equivalent would be Ninja Turtles, but Ninja Turtles hasn't been that good in 10, 15 years.
They're sporadically good. Every so
You know,
often,
actually-
there's a new Ninja Turtle one that's good.
Actually, I'll take that back. I think the closest thing to Cyberfrog that I would equate it to would actually be the recent IDW Power Rangers like Battle for the Grid run.
Yeah. It'd be something similar to that.
That would be the closest industry equivalent that I would put Cyberfrog, and that was one of the most successful books that IDW's ever done.
Yeah, you just said the turtles because they're both animals.
Well, no, I mean anthropomorphic, type books.
Also, wasn't that something that Ethan was inspired by when he made Cyberfrog originally?
I believe so. Yeah.
Probably.
That's why that naturally flows.
Yeah, but that would be an interesting question and an interesting show topic for one day. But I honestly.
By the way, did you guys read Super Harem?
No, not yet. I haven't been able to back it.
No.
Unfortunately. COVID kind of fucked my wallet real good.
I understand that feeling.
Like it took my wallet and it said, "Hey, baby, let me show you a good time," and then it did.
Yeah, and I need to start doing some retirement investment.
Shut the fuck up! I need to stop living paycheck to paycheck. Like my man's over here talking about stock options and retirement investing. Motherfucker, send me some money. Your retirement option.
I'm Ron Swansoning that shit. I'm going and buying like gold and silver bars and burying them in the backyard. What are you talking about?
I'm just gonna come dig up your backyard.
Look, all I'm saying is there's going to be a fire sale at Marvel when when they're going to change the business model and they're going to allow people to say, listen, you could use Spider-Man, but you have to pay us X amount of money and you have to meet the following quality standards.
I'll give you $17.48, Marvel, for all of your IP right now.
Well, no, they would. I think the way things are going, if Disney keeps the Marvel brand at all, they'll have a licensing team and they'll say, "Hey,
Again,
listen,
Disney, I will buy Marvel off of you for $17.48."
Now
no, they can get more than that. They can get more than that."
we're cutting it a little bit close here, but you just raised an interesting
I'll give you $20.
You just raised an interesting topic. I don't think Disney would come off of Marvel, and they're not going to option out Marvel. I think that
Well, no, they're already doing that for like young adult novels,
but they're not
and it
optioning.
works successfully.
They're not optioning off the characters whole cloth like they did when their bankruptcy happened.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's going to be a brand manager. There's going to be a guy named Steve. Steve is going to manage all the licenses for Spider-Man.
Somebody get the Bobs!
And you're going to go to Steve and say, hey, listen, Steve, I have an idea. What if Spider-Man, but instead of being from New York, he was from Racine, Wisconsin? And, like, he pitches you the idea. And
what if Spider-Man loves cheese?
Right. And he says, okay, you're going to pay this much up front and then this percentage on the back end. You have to meet the following standards to be able to use the license. Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah.
It's a license.
I get final say on the last, strike off before you go to print, all that shit.
Yeah, so I think Disney would be more apt to do that than to sell Marvel.
Well, yeah.
Because could you imagine that? Could you imagine all the people who would scrape together like $20,000 to say, I can make a Spider-Man comic book?
Still,
dude,
Marvel,
I would,
or Disney. The offer's open, $17.48. I have it set aside just for this.
I would scrape together $20,000 just to buy Wolverine to bring to life some of the erotic fan fiction that I've read online.
You mean like that picture that everybody was saying? Is this actually from the Hickman X-Men comic?
No,
or like what's going on?
no. What I'm thinking about is a lot gorier and involves a lot more blood.
Will somebody please donate like $20 so I can go buy a box of ammo to shoot myself with?
I'll send you that in the mail tomorrow, gratis.
But if we were going to license a Wolverine property, there was a What If comic book where Wolverine ended up replacing Conan in ancient Samaria. And I'm like going, that'd be an awesome comic book.
That would be an amazing Elseworld book or What If style, graphic novel.
Yeah.
I don't think it could carry a series, but
it would be a graphic novel realistically.
Yeah.
But that could sell like gangbusters.
Right. But the problem is because it would sell like gangbusters, they'd make a sequel with a different writer, and then we're back to this fucking problem that we started out with.
Right, but again, I'm talking about Disney having to like sell everything out on licenses like that, so they could just turn a profit for a very low overhead.
Also, real quick,
and keep the movies because the movies are where their real bread and butter is going to be done.
Real quick before we sign off, I had a thought the other day, and it didn't really strike me until I sat down and thought about it. But there are, I think, over 1,000 issues of Heavy Metal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't that a fucking Netflix show already?
Because porn.
Okay, why isn't it an adult Netflix show already? I've seen porn on Netflix before.
They don't go that porn.
I'm just saying,
American Netflix.
You can tone it down, or you can just make them have a license for that over in the UK. But there are thousands upon thousands of
You got a license for that porn?
Well, here's the thing: Heavy Metal, the movie. I mean, it was the perfect format for a Netflix series.
Mm-hmm.
multiple stories, multiple artists, like nothing tying it together continuity wise, but it's a variety show of sorts, an adult themed variety show. That's a honeypot of just fucking material that is just going to waste.
Well, pitch it to Netflix.
I'm not pitching shit to Netflix. Fuck those guys. I'm trying to get Bezos money, motherfucker. What are you talking about? I'm pitching that shit to Amazon.
Well,
Okay.
Amazon's not as good a deal for a pitch, because basically Amazon allows you to leave things in it, like a rug that may or may not have a body in it in a dumpster at a apartment complex.
I don't get the reference.
The reference is it's a hooker, Cyril. When she's dead and rolled up in a rug, it's called a hooker.
Oh, okay.
That's an Archer reference.
Don Chen in the chat, did you guys watch the animated heavy metal movie? I listened to the soundtrack while writing Cyberfrog versus ARBBH. I own that movie in 2 different formats, Don. They're the VHS in my belongings somewhere packed up, and I own the DVD copy as well. So
my mother
I've
loves that
seen
movie.
I've seen it once or twice, you could say. Also, Cross Comics, how's it going, Rick Piper?
I've seen it.
If you haven't, I'll send you the DVD. Like, the next time I have a little bit of extra money, I'll just buy it and send it to you.
I mean, I can probably.
We should do a watch party of that, actually, because I do own the movie.
Yeah.
We should do a watch party of that.
Well, I was going to suggest Yellowbeard, but
no, we're doing heavy metal first. Your suggestions are always crap.
And
well, I'm putting Yellowbeard in for next.
You know what else would be good to do as a comic book is somebody to make a Captain Stern styled character into a comic book.
Who?
The captain, the square-jawed captain who went on trial, and then hand over fist turned into a giant Hulk mutant that started trying to kill him and destroying the courtroom.
Oh, okay.
I can dig it.
Having that character be a comic book thing, all about this noble square-jawed captain, but he's not like a goofball like Zap Brannigan. He's actually a deeply debaucherous, horrible being who sells people into slavery and stuff.
Okay.
Church, you might be able to sue for life rights on that one.
Yeah, I might be able to, yes. That just sounds like my life minus the slavery. No.
I've been doing this show for how long now? Are you sure minus the slavery?
I mean, you're free to leave whenever you want to. I'm just, going to bash you and dox you. Yeah, I'm just going to bash you and dox you. It's fine. Bernie Wrightston Captain Stern was awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've got my copy of Heavy Metal right here. We'll do a watch party of this.
Also, the other one, Wizards by Bashki, was also another incredible movie that's very aesthetically similar.
Okay. But anyway, that pushes us 2 minutes over budget, so let's get the fuck out of here. I'm going to take this last shot, gentlemen, while you... Larry, tell them where they can find you.
Cheers.
You can find me on thetwitter.com. I also do a show called Recording in Progress. Every so often I pop up on Midnight's Edge After Dark and other podcasts. If you guys all saw the Medicare podcast about Mr. Kurt Doolittle, my buddy Jim and I are going to be doing something a little bit more in-depth about Kurt Doolittle.
Not Jim Medicare, everyone. Don't let him fool you.
No, it's a different friend Jim, not that friend Jim. My buddy Jim, my co-host from my regular show, he does a lot of stuff on libertarian and anarchist topics. So there's been a lot of salt that is delicious that we're going to be bringing up, especially involving Kurt Doolittle.
Pink Himalayan salt, if you will.
I'll be in the chat for that one.
But you can find Larry on Twitter at Karasoth, Karasoth on Twitter.
Yes.
And that's in the description down below. You can find Poe's Law at Undead Scribe on Twitter. Also in the description down below.
Be Dead Scribe.
Yeah.
At this point.
But
also currently in the gutter with ribs in his mouth.
That's right. That's right. But we want to thank him for joining us tonight. I hope he can feel his face in the morning, and may his poops treat him well. Thanks for everybody dropping in the chat. Thanks for everybody leaving a like. Thanks for the new subscribers. Check us out on Patreon if you want to support the show. Check us out on Streamlabs if you want to support Ayrton having lunch tomorrow. Other than that, everyone, we will see you this weekend with a couple of new shows at least, and we'll probably do a watch party at some point as well for heavy metal. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Join the Discord. Hit me up on Twitter at Church Failure. Find Ayrton at Ayrton McCartney, Ayrton McCartney on Twitter. All of that down in the description below, and we will see you on the next one. Ayrton, get us the fuck out of here, buddy.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
And somebody bring me a damn cheeseburger.
All right.